Welcome, everybody. Episode 196 of Rush Roundtable. This is Alien Shore. We're going through the Counterparts album. I want to introduce our panel first, some veteran Rush fans panelists. Paul Simon, Paul Cormier. Paul, did I say that right?
Yeah, close enough.
Close enough. Okay. Yeah. Uh, Alex Kelly, Kira McManus. So glad we're all here. And what a great song to talk about. I'm just going to say a couple things about this song. It's a special and important song to me. Throughout this series, we've been talking a lot about the theme of counterparts being duality. And that's true. And I would add to that that it's not just duality, but it's about one thing I used to say about this record was everything you ever need to know about navigating human relationships you can find on this record, right? So, relationships with people other than us, whether that be love and romance, whether that be people different than us, whether it be our families or children. This album has so much to give us. But enough of that. Before we move in to the heart of the episode, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan, of Rush fans, to give us a little insight into a Rush mystery. Spooky. What is said at the beginning of Alien Shore? So, Ryan, I turn it over to you. Unveil this mystery to us.
Hey, thanks, David. So, what is said at the beginning of Alien Shore? Well, fans have long since debated and discussed online for years that it was either Men About Oars, someone saying Men About Oars, or it was Alex Lifeson holding his nose and saying, Out of my nose. Well, it's actually neither. Back in June of 2022, I had the opportunity to speak with Alex Lifeson, Maya Wynn, Alf Annabellini, and Andy Curran, all of Envy of None, on a Zoom chat, and I asked Alex Lifeson what was said. Well, he said it's actually falabalush, which is caveman speak for I'm so tired. Now, what's caveman speak? Well, the recording engineer on Counterparts was Kevin Caveman Shirley. Kevin Caveman Shirley yelled into Alex's pickups, falabalush, and that's what's said at the beginning of Alien Shore. So hopefully that solves the Rush mystery of this, long since debated topic of what is said at the beginning of Alien Shore. Back to you, David.
Okay. So, as we get into Alien Shore, really awesome opening instrumentation. Like so many Rush songs, it just, and especially on this album, it just comes in strong. Any comments, especially from our musicians on the panel, about the opening music?
I would ask anyone if they recognize what other song from the 80s the intro is reminiscent of. Because when you stop and think about Alex Lifeson's riffs and some of his intros and whatnot, this 12th fret 15 got a little bit of a chord action happening there. You stop and go back through the catalog and think, where have Red Sector A. It's not a copycat, obviously, but he basically he clearly came up with a riff that is not dissimilar to Red Sector A.
Wow. You're right. I'd never seen that. Never thought about that before.
That's why I'm here.
And every time I hear Red Sector, and every time I'll hear Red Sector A, I'll think of this conversation and go, "Oh, darn you, Alex, you ruined it."
I mean, Rush has a lot of derivatives and derivatives of themes of their lyrics. So why not derivatives of some of the riffs that they used?
Well, it's like John Fogerty in the 80s when he was sued by his record company. They're basically saying you're plagiarizing CCR, and he's saying it's my style, it's how I write. And yeah, if you have a 40-year career, I'm not gonna say you're gonna repeat yourself, but you're going to fall back into something that you would do without thinking. That's how it works. And maybe he just did this as he did, and maybe at some point he might have said, am I playing Red Sector A? No, I'll change it. I don't know. Unlike those of us who got to actually find out what was said at the beginning of the song, I've never talked to the guy about it.
Yeah, there's some stuff actually on Test for Echo that I hear and I go, that's from Lock and Key. You know, so there's some similarities there. What I want to do now is like take the beginning of Alien Shore and Red Sector A and layer them on top of each other, and play them together, and see how that works out. So anyway, so yeah, this song I want to say about Alien Shore. When we think of what is alien, whether it's aliens in outer space, um, aliens from other places or exotic places, things we're not familiar with. And what we tend to not be familiar with, we tend to not be comfortable with. But this entire song is about reaching out to the alien shore, to open yourself up to something that's unfamiliar or different. And so, with that in mind, the opening verse says "you and I." So I love that already. Neil is, in his masterful lyrics, "You and I, we're in this together. We're strangers by one chromosome, slave to the hormone, body and soul, in a struggle to be happy and free, swimming in a primitive sea." I'll have something to say about that later. But so this first verse is obviously about gender, really, or at least biological sex, the difference between us. And so we're strangers. So should I read the second verse to tag onto that, or is yeah, because this kind of answers that. It's a kind of polyphony that speaks back to that. So you and I, we're in this primitive sea, right? But we have to dive below the surface. Then this is metaphor, right? A world of red neon, ultramarine. If you're thinking about what is going on below the surface of the ocean, shining bridges on the ocean floor, reaching to the alien shore. Go.
One of my first thoughts for the first verse, I'm actually thinking in basics, almost primordial ooze. Here in the beginning, lays it out in front of us. We have this base thing where there are differences. You and I, two different things. We've established differences, and then talking about superficial, here are these differences. But then when we go below the surface, now let's get what's underneath that. Let's find out what more there is.
I think these two lines, in a struggle to be happy and free, swimming in a primitive sea, and forgive me, I do have the lyric sheets beside me. I don't know. I'm latching onto this because I feel like it's somewhat of a metaphor in a way for life. Because if you think about it, a lot of people will say expressions like, there's many fish in the sea, there's many fish in the ocean. And if you think about it, like the ocean is vast and we have so many interactions in life, and there's just so many possibilities of the way our life can go. I know it doesn't really fit in with the duality theme, but it's just something that I thought of that I'm wondering what you guys feel about.
Well, like we said about the ocean is vast. I mean, in some ways, that kind of touches on the point, is that the world's bigger than you or me. Right? It is vast. We're swimming in this primitive sea, and we're in a struggle to be happy and free. That's all we want. Everybody just wants to be happy and to be free. But there's all this other stuff out there that we don't get, that we don't understand. Sometimes is even threatening to us. And this was kind of the point I think that I was wanting to make, as far as and diving below the surface, is that yeah, we start out chromosomes, hormones, it's basic biological, primitive, evolutionary, struggle for survival. But I think Neil's wanting to say that maybe there's something a little more to us than just survival of the fittest, that maybe we can reach out to the alien shore and maybe be a little more civilized, not predatory. So that's kind of my take on that. It's a juxtaposition between primitive and what's below the surface, and we're more than just, we're part of the primitive. We can't escape that, right? We live in this kind of life that we're driven by, hormones and everything else, but yet there's a little bit more to us, and that's kind of the duality too. And the duality isn't one over the other. It's sort of figuring out how to live in both. the basic primitive embodiment, but yet at the same time, not just be a slave to that. So
Also his the idea of setting the scene, creating imagery. Obviously, he like Dave, you were just saying, he's beginning with, and Kier obviously brought that up too. He's looking at the human relation, which makes sense, and the idea that's in the first line of the first stanza of the first verse. And the second stanza of the first verse, we must dive below the surface. So those are blatant, right in your face. Here's a human relationship. Let's not be, we're different. Let's not be shallow about it. But the irony, I think, is that he also is referencing shining bridges on the ocean floor and the idea of the world of red neon and ultramarine. That speaks to a shallow part of the ocean, as said by someone who lives much more inland than anyone in Florida or maritime state provinces. The idea here is that if you can see the ocean floor, it's really not that deep of an ocean. We're not talking about the Mariana Trench. So in that respect, he's also kind of foreshadowing a later verse in regards to shallow ocean waters. At least that's kind of what I'm looking at as far as, like I say, the imagery that young Peart was creating for all of us to enjoy.
Yeah, that's cool, because just get below the surface. It's not that far down to realize it's not just the surface stuff. That's awesome. That's a great insight.
It's a good comment on superficiality versus authenticity. I know this is written way before social media. Even MySpace, this is 1993. One of my things before I was born. So MySpace wasn't even out. Social media wasn't even out. So I want to modernize this verse a little bit, or these two verses, because if you think about it, social media, and I don't use a lot of it. People post the good parts of their life, and really it's just so fake, because it only shows you like the good parts and makes other people feel that it looks on the outside like you have this like perfect life, and nothing ever goes wrong, when life is just fraught with challenges and adversities. So I know this was written before all that, but it's just making me think of that in a modern context.
Perfect. Yeah. No, that's very true. Anytime a writer writes something, there's stuff contained in it that the writer doesn't even know that's there, that we pick up later. So
we carry a sensitive cargo below the waterline. Everyone does. Lock and Key keeps coming up in these lyrics, and I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Lock and Key is now one of the best songs.
Oh, I love that. So I've been going through, this is tangent. David does that. I'm going through the Rush catalog about once a year, maybe every 2 years. I'll just start with the first record and just listen to everything. It may take me a month. It may take me 6 months. It doesn't matter. I just do that every year or two. And I'm only up to Hemispheres. So now I'm going to listen to everything really quick so I can get to Hold Your Fire. So I can hear Lock and Key again. So it's great stuff. So anyway, the pre-chorus, for you and me, sex is not a competition. What a slap in the face to the entire history of gender differences. For you and me, sex is not a job description. This whole idea, the social construction of this is what the men do, this is what the lady folk do. I teach this stuff to my students, and we look at different historical instances of an 18-year-old girl in the 17th century who was highly educated at her father's insistence, who her mother said no, but her father did it anyway. And then she wrote a book in Latin at, I think, 17 or 18 years old. And everybody said, well, her father must have just written that and put her name on it, because a woman could never write that. So these job descriptions of what men and women can do. Neil is already in 93 saying nope. But for you and me, we agree. And I think this is also some foreshadowing in the sense that we get this, you and me, but it's still a cultural, social struggle. So many don't. So any comments before just jumping into the next verse? Because the chorus kind of comes back to that same theme. Here it's sex. It's going to be race in the next one. But open it up. Paul Cormier, you got anything to say? Don't want to put you on the spot, brother, but
Don't want to put me on the spot, but you do. Love you, Dave.
Love you too, man.
I've told you I'm not into the whole philosophical side of things. I can't even say philosophy correctly because I'm Canadian, but you know what I mean? Like I'm learning just being, but 100%. But I'm just learning just being on the panel and listening to how you guys interpret the lyrics. So that's how I kind of enjoy these sessions. You know, I might throw in a bit of talking about the music every so often, like Alex does, but you guys can have more than enough material to keep talking about the verses and the philosophy behind his lyrics.
All right. Well,
actually, hey, David, speaking of the music, something actually did that reminded me of something Alex had mentioned earlier when he turned the phrase as far as I can't remember the phrase you turned, but it was genius. No. But at the open instrumentation, I noticed when all three come in at the exact same time, they're playing three different things. I mean, obviously they all fit. It's Rush, but compliments notwithstanding, there are three very, fast beats per minute. Three very, I'm trying to think of a good adjective for it, frantic, frenetic, what have you, but three very busy pieces. It kind of fits the song as well. This is one of the more up-tempo, chaotic's the wrong word. Somebody help me with an adjective here, but three very high-tempo, fast, they're different pieces, but they all fit together. That kind of also musicians help me out here if we got a word for it, but they all fit.
I think about the interview that Getty did with Dan Rather, the big interview. And one of the things Getty said to Dan Rather was that, we've always thought of ourselves, these three guys, as the world's smallest symphony orchestra.
Right.
And it's not like you have a particular melody and then, the bass guitar and the drums are the rhythm and they just support that general melody that the guitar is doing. They all had their different parts that came together. If you've ever gone to a symphony or, looked at a score, there's all these different things going on that the conductor brings, together. And another thing to your point, Paul, is Taylor Hawkins at the Rock Hall induction described Alex's solos as chaotic and melodic, at the same time. And that's probably a description of this song.
Well, the intro, as Paul's stating it, I mean, you're looking at, it's not like full on counterpoints, but at the same time too, there is a little bit of that. They're doing their thing. It's not like box or definition of counterpoint, of course, but that is obviously a pretty substantial trait of Western culture music. But yeah, they come in cranking.
Yeah,
Lifeson high up there. Getty's got some 16th notes, just a little bit of a quick phrase on the bass. Neil, obviously, he knows how to fill some space just right. And then for the verse, they open it up a little bit. Lifeson is still quite active, obviously, during the verse. He's got kind of a riff meets a little bit of an arpeggio going that he goes low. Very E Mixolydian, for which I know that's what everyone's thinking, but yeah, it opens up when the singing comes in, as most songwriters would want to do, make some space for the narration, basically the verbal narration. But yeah, they come in cranking, open it up, but as I say, Lifeson still got his, I'm going to say, different low riff going throughout this part, and it's the sort of thing that what he's doing. Especially when we are, and since we're talking about the pre-chorus, there's a little bit of a bass walk. Like if we can all think of that part in Tom Sawyer that is kind of has a little bit of a riff where the notes, you got some bass notes moving up and down. He's doing that here too in the pre-chorus. So the verses have their figure. The pre-chorus, they add in a little bit of forward momentum to say we're going somewhere. But then he takes it back. They all take it back to the second verse. And then there will be the pre-chorus again, which obviously Dave's already referencing since we're going to talk about race. Then they hit us with the actual chorus. So it's a nice little, as Dave mentioned, and like Getty was saying, it's a nice little symphonic arrangement that was obviously very, very well planned out. Not that I'm trying to simp on my favorite band, but it's going to happen.
And Getty's vocals are still top notch at this point. in their careers. Like to me, like Power Windows is when he really discovered his voice right through, Hold Your Fire, Presto, and he still has it. And I think after Test for Echoes, when they get that break and he comes back in the 2000s, and that's when he starts to getting more aware. But when he says "For You and Me," but he hits that high note when he says it, it's clear. It's beautiful. I love it.
Like the vocal work he was doing with Rupert Hine, one of the things Rupert did bring to Geddy's arsenal was the vocal work, I think. So he's really showing it off here. I mean, now the work of Peter Collins now, but I think that he's putting it here, like you said, yeah.
Was it Rupert Hine that I think Geddy might have said that, suggested to them that they could write songs in different keys? Geddy was like singing so high in the early stuff, and but yet he can still hit those high notes, but it's more of sort of a vocal tapestry. So, in the interest of time, got to keep moving on. You and I, we are pressed into these solitudes. As much as we're together or whatever, we're still just in these solitudes. Color and culture, language, race, but just variations on a theme. Right? Islands in a much larger stream. There's just so much that can be said about that. Um, again, all of these things that are alien, right? Different color. People say, they talk about, people of color. I'm a person of color. I'm a pasty white kid from Indiana. That's a color. Multiple colors, right? And cultures, language. It's always, it can't be just those other people that are that way, but we have a kind of commonality. So we're islands in a much larger stream. Distinguished panel.
I'm waiting for my pun in the pre-chorus.
Okay. Well, variations on a theme. If theoretically we all came out of Africa and some of us, our ancestry just took a quick left and went up to Northern European forests, some kept going east, some stayed. We're a variation on a theme.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, except for Paul. I mean, all of us live in the United States except for Paul. So I don't know much about Canadian history. Apologies. It's not American history, but I mean, America is a nation full of immigrants. I study immigration as part of my MPH degree, and I mean, there was a time where it was just the Native Americans. Then we had the British. Then we had everyone that was coming over from Western Europe. And I mean, and there was periods where there wasn't a lot of immigration. We've had these peaks over the centuries. And then we have had, since the 2000s, we have had a large amount of immigrants from South America, mainly, and Asia. So, I mean, America is a melting pot of people, and it's beautiful. And, I was thinking about this before we came on, but like, I was thinking about the title Alien Shore, which is it has a lot of meaning, but I kept thinking, you know what? I think this song is also about immigration, because alien shores. If you think about it, we have a lot of immigration here in the United States, and again, Canada, I don't know as much. So I'm sorry, Paul. Please correct me. interject if need be. But immigration happens everywhere,
especially Toronto.
So
the imagery is always coming to a shore, right? Landing on the shores of this new strange place that you're coming to as an immigrant. So, yeah. And
I think it's more important now than ever that, we treat immigrants with love and respect, especially because over on the other side of the world, we now have a lot of refugees. I've studied this too because of all the wars and stuff that are going on in the Middle East, and all these countries have had to tackle with, well, how do we take these people in and give them a home?
Well, the
So
default
I think he was
position.
also commenting on that, even though I don't really know anything about immigration in the 90s. I think that was kind of the low period for the United States. Anyways, just going on a tangent.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, the default position for so many people is that the alien is somebody I should be afraid of. And, I think, here in Texas, Greg Abbott, what he's doing, throwing balls in the Rio Grande River that, are sharp and dangerous and basically will kill you if you try to cross the Rio Grande. These are the scary people that we can't let over. And yeah, we can have a lot of conversation about immigration, right? And the problems. It's not a simple solution. You had a lot of problems to be worked out. But your default position, I think Neil would say, with this song, isn't, these are horrible people, all of them as an entire group. Uh, just cover them in a blanket way that we should be afraid of. But at the end of the day, we're just variations on a theme. You know, so we can deal. Yeah, we
Exactly.
can talk about all the problems in immigration, but the default position should be you're another human being in the same race, and we're variations on a theme. So, unless I wax philosophical uh, or political, even worse. The next pre-chorus for you and me, race is not a competition. Same thing that was said in the previous one, sex is not a competition. For you and me, race is not a definition. So we're not just, he just said, we're pressed into these solitudes, but at the same time, you and me, we recognize that we're, not limited by these socially constructed definitions. For you and me, we agree. What do we agree on?
Human race.
Yeah, I think most
Competition.
people.
This is not going to define us. And Neil did in his interview with Mark Allen decry the fact that no one caught his pun. Race is not a competition. In the tapes archive in '94.
Yeah.
So had to throw that one out there.
Oh,
Right.
We get you, Neil. We get you, Neil.
Yeah. And to not, I'll pause for the pun, but then also you stop and think about the early 90s. There were a few movies out that were certainly speaking to race. Do the Right Thing, School Days, and I can't remember. There was another one whose title is lost on me, but those certainly come to mind. Late 80s, early 90s. The aspect of race was definitely being addressed to and certainly college campuses. College I was attending at the time this album came out, that was definitely that was actually a program. One of my RAs, they all had to do something, so he decided to have a discussion of race. So that was definitely that was in the air. I mean, it's always been in the air. It'll always be in the air, but in some way, shape, or form, and it continues to change. But it's ultimately human race. And also, I'm going to speak. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go.
I'm going to be very quick on this. Rush was photographed by notable alien to Canada, notable immigrants, Yusuf Karsh, Armenian immigrants. And then obviously Armenia had a considerable exodus following 1905. And I'm not going to go too far into that, obviously. Some of us might know, some of us know how to operate Wikipedia. But Yusuf Karsh photographed them on Grace Under Pressure, as he references Grace Under Pressure yet again. But, Armenian Canadian immigrants who certainly was notable in the photographic world, portrait photography. Just saying, I'm out.
So we've had a couple pre-choruses, now the chorus, and it's basically the same line three times, reaching for the alien shore. But it's that third line, but it's just really, pushing, reaching for the alien shore, which seems to kind of sum up what has gone before, has been about. We're pressed into these solitudes, but let's kind of break out of it. Let's reach for the alien shore, dive below the surface, see all of these various themes, variations on a theme that we make up, and let's actually try to reach the shore that is not the familiar, comfortable one to us, but the one that's alien. And then there's a guitar solo. Anybody want to comment on the guitar solo?
Okay, back in. So it's about 24 measures. He comes in out of his riff. So the riff kind of reintros well, it's a reintro, but into the solo section. Obviously, as they say, about 24-ish measures, kind of lengthy for, definitely longer than Sting ever gave Andy Summers. He's throwing in some octaves, classic 90s, basically, and, some of the usual kind of Lifeson phrasing double stops. The thing I think of coming out of that riff, I'm sorry, coming out of the solo, is that he changes tonality considerably for the verse, where he goes into a very jangly, I'm sure, the Telecaster guitar part, where he's just got 16th notes that he's strumming. He abandoned the riffing, the low riffing from the first part of the song.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. So one thing about Alex's guitar solos, we did an episode recently on Alex Lifeson's forgotten solos. In other words, some of those that we thought would be really, really cool, but we don't think of them as much because there's, limelight and, whatnot. This might be one of those too. Alex just had a way of phrasing solos melodically that somehow captured the theme of the song itself. He could like take Neil's lyrics and put them in music, and put them in his solos. And this might be one of those as well. So back to you and I. We reject these narrow attitudes. Competition, job description, language and race. We reject all these narrow attitudes. Instead, we add to each other like a coral reef. And it's something I just hadn't thought of before this, but the effect of what's happening in terms of climate change on coral reefs, breaking them down and destroying the life that's going on them, is a metaphor maybe socially, for a lot of the things happening today. Is the coral reef that we could be adding to each other is also breaking down. But when a coral reef is healthy, it's an ecosystem that's just full of life and vitality.
And also one of the most diverse ecosystems, as far as the diversity of, we're coral, but we're very, very diverse in our shallow waters.
Yes. And so building bridges on the ocean floor, which is, kind of cool, back in that primitive surface, we can't build, that's not where we build bridges because we're still sort of afraid and predatory and have this survival instinct. But when we dive below the surface, that very shallow area is where we can start to build bridges on the ocean floor. Again, reaching for the alien shore. And then they move into this other pre-chorus, repeating some of the things that have happened before. For you and me, sex is not a competition. For you and me, race is not a definition. And then though Neil Canadian moves into, a little bit of United States history, for you and me, we hold these truths to be self-evident. We're all equal. For you and me, Paul, Kira, Alex, we'd elect each other president. We would just do that, Don't elect me, though. It'd be a really bad one, but I mean, I would try, but so yeah, we would elect each other president. For you and me, we might agree, but that's just us. And I think that last line is what Neil's lamenting somewhat. In 93, the 90s were a tough time, right? The AIDS crisis, a lot of alienation, the Clinton years. It was just a time where there was, I mean, even, doesn't matter whether you like Hillary Clinton or not. That's not the point. But just because she existed, she was, there was just so much divisiveness over, the kind of things that she did, and just her presence. And I'm speaking as an American. We don't know what was going on in Canada at the time, or all over the world, but there was just so much happening, at that time. And with all of that, we might agree, but that's just us. And I sense a little bit of a lament there that Neil is talking about.
In the interview that I was basing most of my things off of that he did with Mark Allen for Tapes Archive, he specifically pointed that line, but that's just us, the people that he spends his time with and would discuss these topics with. And he lamented that, but that's just us. The other examples, and we don't have the time, but the examples that he gave that frustrated him, where people would either misinterpret things that he spoke about or songs that he wrote, lyrics that he wrote, etc. And it just amazed him. It was as close to passionate as I've ever heard him in an interview, where he said, it amazed me that people would say this about that. And he goes, but hey, the best I could do is write this or talk about that. And these are things that the people I spend time with or discuss these things with, that's just us. That's what we say. We hold these truths to be self-evident. And he actually quoted the song as he was talking about it. He said, we hold these truths to be self-evident. It's common sense to us. So I love that line. And I almost take it, I don't think it was intended this way, but I like the way, but that's just us. I think that's justice. That's how I hear it.
Wow.
Not saying it was meant that way, but that's how I hear it.
Oh, Paul, this song, I was gonna say this for the very end, I'm gonna say now. This song has so much substance, depth, breadth, color. This is one of Neil's, I'm gonna say this is one of Neil's most dense lyrics in terms of thematic and writing, and there's just so many meanings, and it's incredible. And it's not really enigmatic, it's just multi-dimensional. But I want to say I'm kind of lamenting, I'm thinking of that line, and I'm lamenting just like the amount of divisiveness and lack of connection there seems to be among human beings, thanks to technology. Also politically, especially in the United States, everything is just so portrayed as just so black and white. There's no middle ground. There's no happy medium. It's like you're either this or this. And that is just like, that's a riff that's just continued to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I mean it's a challenging time, and this is Rush, right? It's like this album is 1993, and we can bring it forward and see how it resonates today and in everything that the country, the world is experiencing. I mean, there's Russia and Ukraine. This song speaks to that. There, and it's like we Rush fans, we're just a bunch of nerds. We just say, does everybody listen to Rush, take it in, and everything will be okay. I just love to be able to do that, right? And so that's why we love this band so much, because everything that we deal with in everyday life and socially, politically, culturally, Rush keeps speaking to us. you know Older Rush, new Rush, and then the final chorus, it just repeating. It's almost this back and forth, reaching for the alien shore. That's just us. Reaching for the alien shore, but that's just us. And well, that's just us. But let's keep reaching for the alien shore, which could even be the hostile person. The
True.
angry person. That's the alien shore too.
Yep.
And so we just we got to try, right? So it's a great song. I love this song. I mean, there's a reason my Instagram handle is Alien Shore 2112. This
Look them up.
This song, yeah, I know it's
his followers go up by 10.
And of course, every Rush fan ever, whatever their handle is, 2112 at the end of
not
it.
me.
Mine either.
See, good for you guys. Good for you guys. I'm more primitive, However, I will say my PIN numbers are not 2112 anymore. I finally got wise.
That's smart.
Yeah, I have some other, more cryptic Rush references in my PIN numbers and whatnot, but I won't reveal them here. But
how many Rush fans have been hacked over the years because of 2112 was or YYZ was an easy guess?
We're supposed to be smart, right?
Yeah,
because we're Rush fans. We're the smart people. So this whole album just speaks to the the strain and the difficulty of human relationships, but I take it ultimately as hopeful, you know. Cold Fire, and I'm not, going to get into the other episodes and things like that. It's very realistic, just stoically realistic about the struggles that we have, but it's hopeful that we can navigate our way through them. So in our last minutes, go around the round table. Any final comments, Paul Simon?
I think we nailed it. And I'd even say there's an underlying tertiary theme of expectations on each song, too.
Nice.
Look for that.
Perfect.
Nice.
Canadian Paul.
So how I'm
I love this guy
now?
so much. He knows it.
I love how this song ends. Just how they sing that they finish the chorus or the chorus. Alien Shore. Bang. Done. Like, don't have to fade it out. Some songs I don't like the fade outs, but I like how this one just they pack it in, they finish it, they move on to the next song.
Awesome. Alex.
A couple of things. I like how the song begins on a G power chord and it ends on an open C chord for Lifeson. And at the very end, he's kind of slamming on, A power chord, G over B up to the C. A lot of folk music, certainly a lot of American folk music. I can't speak to Canadian folk music if I keep with our theme of tonight of not knowing Canada's culture well enough. The U.S. folk music, you had a lot of writers. Of course, they're all out of England, and that's who went to Canada. They basically often began on the 5 chord, ended on the 1 chord, and even though I said the verses were more E-mixolydian, Rush has all sorts of modulations. Love it. We all do. Another thing, Alien Shores was an album and we're back to Canada, by Toronto band Platinum Blonde, mid-'80s. So Platinum Blonde, you got some guys in Toronto. Hey, there's this other dude in Toronto. Let's get him to play a couple solos on a couple of songs there, eh? They did. The album was titled Alien Shores. So once again, Wikipedia and YouTube. Hey, we're on YouTube. Once again, we can find Alien Shores and Platinum Blonde, and we can hear a solo on a song. Hang on, what song was that? Crying Over You. You might hear a mixture of The Big Money and one of Lifeson's single string, kind of faster analog kid Free Will vibe.
Oh, it was around the same time too, right? So
same time as
mid-'80s.
Power Windows, yeah, 85. So yeah. We keep bringing Canada into it. Weird.
It's almost like Canada's the alien shore in this episode.
It's almost like it's a focal point for us here.
I think we're all just like sad we're not in Canada because we love Rush so much.
It's like 2/3 of the band's parents were immigrants in the 20th century.
From Alien Shores.
No.
Yeah.
Getty's parents were Holocaust survivors. God bless their hearts.
Yep.
Yes. So, Kira, any more last words?
Oh man, I could ramble. Oh, this song is just absolutely wonderful. Oh man, I have to say, maybe this is controversial, I don't know, but I feel like in Counterparts and in this song, all the songs leading up to it, Neil's been pretty ambitious with his lyrics discussing all these issues: racism, sexism, xenophobia, all stuff. It's a pretty ambitious statement, maybe not at the time, but now. But it makes me really respect him a lot more, because at the end of the day, like, overall, I take this song to mean that we're all just human beings. We're all the same. We're Homo sapien. We just all have our unique differences, and in the end, most people agree that everyone is just equal, and we all just want to live just live a good, meaningful life. Also, I have to say, I think Alex's solos, I don't comment on them too much because I'm not musically inclined, but I think it's very heartfelt. I actually really enjoy it, and it stands out a bit to me. I don't think it's like his best solo, but there's just something in that fast pace chord. It's just, I don't know, it's just very heartfelt. Mm-hmm. So I think this is one of Rush's most underrated songs lyrically. It's just so absolutely incredible. It's such an incredible, powerful statement. Those are my final
Absolutely
words.
true. And what a perfect note to wrap up on. This is episode 196 of Rush Roundtable. There's so many things to talk about. We're approaching 200. That's amazing. Stay tuned for 200. That's going to be such a fun episode, like all the other ones are too. And hopefully we'll be around for another couple thousand episodes over the years. But it'll help us a lot if you subscribe. Go to Rush Fans on YouTube. We're on Twitter, Instagram. Look us up, like, subscribe, and comment on this video. What are your thoughts on Alien Shore? You know, did it resonate? What we talked about, did it resonate with you? Do you have insights that we overlooked that you wish we'd have talked about? Let us know what those are. And see you next time, everybody. Rush on.